So reading is kind of the whole point of this channel. Reading and trying to sell my writing, to be honest, go buy my book, etc. But yeah. Today, as a warm-up read, I had a look for I'd like one of the royalty-free books. What are they called? Public domain books, and I found a collection of Celtic fairy tales. I thought, and one of those would be nice just to sort of warm up a little bit before diving into Moon Girl as a whole. So the only thing is, I'm going to be reading a book called Field of Bolianus, and I'm not sure I'm saying that right. I really hope I am. It doesn't say it much in the actual story. I have read it, so I should be okay. Here is the actual book, or at least this will be what I'm reading from, so you can read along with me. Please let me know if the font is too small, but hopefully it should be fairly okay for you to read with me. Let's get do this. Let's do this then. Yay! Field of Bolianus. One fine day in harvest, it was indeed Lady Day in harvest. Oh, you can see my cursor. That's good, because now you'll be able to see what I'm doing. Didn't realise that. That everybody knows it to be one of the greatest holidays in the year. Tom Fitzpatrick was taking a ramble through the ground and went along the sunny side of the hedge, when all of a sudden he heard a clanking sort of noise a little before him in the hedge. "Dear me," said Tom. But isn't it surprising to hear the Stoneclatters singing so late in the season? So Tom stole on, going on the tops of his toes to see if he could get a sight of what was making the noise, to see if he was right in his guess. The noise stopped, but as Tom looked sharply through the bushes, what should he see in a nook of the hedge but a brown pitcher that might hold but 1.5 gallons of liquor, and by and by a little wee tiny bit of an old man, with a little motty of a cocked hat stuck on the top of his head, a dishy-doshy leather apron hanging before him, pulled out a little wooden stool and stood upon it, and dipped a little piggin into the pitcher, and took out the full of it, and put it beside the stool, and then sat down under the pitcher, and began to work at putting a heel piece on a bit of a bruise just fit for himself. "Well, by the powers," Tom said to himself, "I've often heard tell of the leprechauns, and, to tell God's truth, I never rightly believed in 'em. But here's one of 'em. In real earnest, if I go knowingly to work, I'm a made man. They say a body must never take their eyes off 'em, or they'll escape." Tom now stole a little further, with his eyes fixed on the little man, just as a cat does a mouse. So when he got up quite close to him, "God bless your work, neighbour," said Tom. The little man raised up his head. "Thank you kindly," he said. "I wonder you'd be working on the holiday," said Tom. "That's my own business, not yours," was the reply. "Well, maybe you'd be civil enough to let us what you've got in that picture there," said Tom. "That I will, with pleasure," he said. "It's good beer." "Beer?" said Tom. "Thunder and fire, where did you get that?" "Where did I get it? Is it? Why, I made it. And what do you think I made it of? Devil a one of me knows, said Tom. Bit of malt, I suppose. What else? Well, you're out. I made it of hearth. Of hearth? Said Tom, bursting out laughing. Sure you don't think me such a fool as to believe that. Do as you please, he said, but what I tell you is the truth. Did you never hear tell of the Danes? Well, what about them? Said Tom. Why, all the about them there is. Is that what they were here? They taught us to make beer out of hearth, and the secret's in my family ever since. Will you give me a taste of that beer? Said Tom. God, these are a challenge with some of the sentence structures. There was that one before with just a lot of ands. And, dan. You won't get away with that now, that's for sure. Oh, what they could get away with back in the day. I'll tell you what it is, young man. It would be fitter for you to be looking after your father's property than to be bothering decent, quiet people. If you're foolish with your foolish questions. There now, while you're idling away your time here, the cows are broken into the oats and are knocking the corn all about. Tom was taken so by surprise with this that he was just on the very point of turning around when he recollected himself. So, afraid that the like might happen again, he made a grab for the leprechaun and caught him up in his hand. But in his hurry he overset the pitcher and spilled the beer, so that he could not get a taste of it to tell what sort it was. When he swore that he would kill him if he did not show him where his money was, Tom looked so wicked and so bloody-minded that the little man was quite frightened. So he says, "Come along with me a couple of fields off, and I'll show you me crock of gold." So they went, and Tom held the leprechaun fast in his hand, and never took his eyes off him, though they had crossed hedges and ditches and a crooked bit of bog, till at last they came to a field full of blooms. I assume they mean the big pots, the cauldrons kind of thing. And the leprechaun pointed to a big millennium and said, "Dig under that millennium, and you'll get a great cock." That's the problem. Tongue, no. That is not the right word. Crock. Full of guineas. Tom, in his hurry, had never thought to bring a spade with him, so he made up his mind to run home and fetch one, and that he might know the place again, he took off one of his red garters and tied it round the millennium. Then he said to the leprechaun, "Swear you'll not take that garter away from that millennium." And the leprechaun swore right away not to touch it. "I suppose," said the leprechaun very civilly, "you have no further occasion for me?" "No," says Tom. "You may go away now, if you please, and Godspeed to you, and may good luck attend you wherever you go." "Well, goodbye to you, Tom Fitzpatrick," said the leprechaun, and much good may it do you when you get it." So Tom ran for dear life till he came home, got a spade, and then away with him, as hard as he could go, back to the field of Bollions. I am getting this wrong the entire time, I know I am. But when he got there, lo and behold, not a millennium in the field, but had a red garter the very model of his own, tied around it. So as to digging up the whole field, that was all nonsense, for there was more than 40 good Irish acres in it. So Tom came home again, with his spade on his shoulder, a little cooler than he went, and many's the hearty curse he gave the leprechaun every time he thought of the neat turn he had served him. So, the end! So that's just a funny little story about a man trying to outsmart a leprechaun, and the leprechaun is going, ha ha ha, no. Oh, wrong one. I thought that was a fun one. It's a little difficult in the language, I think. It would be nice to have that updated into more modern language, then you could sort of get the idea that the leprechaun had somehow managed to like double the garter and like tied it onto other things so that he couldn't get his gold. Nya, 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 nya. Oh. Sorry, I needed a quick drink after that. But that's my warm-up story, and oh lordy did I just pick one that was actually quite difficult. So we're going to change our currently reading to my own book, my very own book. Moon Girl on Moon. Moon, capitalized. We have to capitalize these moon rows. Nope, that's my middle name. Moonrise. And we will be on chapter 1. I'm trying to at least put the chapter in the bottom corner here, so that if anyone sort of turns up partway through me reading it, then maybe they can catch up, or they can, if you have the book yourself, you can try find where I'm up to with that in the corner, hopefully. That's the hope, that's the dream. Alright, let me just get the view sorted. I just need to swap it from the other one. In fact, I'm just gonna do a quick BRB screen while I get this sorted out. No? There we go. Turns out I didn't even need it. It just it did it by itself. I had to practice swapping that, and then it did it. I shouldn't be mad. I shouldn't be mad that something's going too right. Internet. Right, so I'm hoping to be able to read you maybe the first couple of chapters. The chapters are a bit longer in this book than they are in the further ones, because I think it was later on when I've been writing these, not drawing. The drawing is done by a lady called Joy Oblivion, who is an absolutely wonderful artist. After reading a lot more after publishing the first book, I realised that shorter chapters are actually kind of nicer to read overall, I think, because you have really good pick up and put down points in books. So the chapters get shorter and shorter as my books go on, in other words. But yeah, so this is going to be Moon Girl on by myself, Bryony Rosemith. My licensing. This book is licensed for me! I have all the permissions. I give myself permission to read it all. The power. The power. Right. So, chapter 1, Moon Girl. Good evening, humanity. A woman sighed as her favourite TV show changed to a man sitting on a black throne. Tall, with a sharp suit and an evil smile, he pushed back some overly gelled black hair as he leant forward on his throne, turning blue eyes that were almost too bright to the audience. Seriously, it's like the 5th time this month. I know many of you have seen me in the morning papers, on the news, or in videos on the internet battling it out start once more with good old Frigid Hack. But I will introduce myself for those not enlightened. I am Apex Illusionist, master of the sense of sight. I have come to make you see. See what? See the world as I do. The girl swished her short and unruly red hair as she mimicked every move of the man's villainous announcement routine. Get some new moves, Apex. Flopping back into her seat, her ocean blue eyes turned dull as she listened to yet another attempt to take over the world, or threaten heroes, or a general declaration of chaos to come. It didn't matter which, because in the world she lived in, this was normal. Ever since the turn of the millennium, humans had been developing powers, superpowers, just like superheroes. They could fly, throw fire, shake the earth, just like heroes and villains of comic books and movies. Out of nowhere, people were waking up with supernatural abilities. A lot of people didn't want to believe it was happening. Those without special powers called them tricks for a long time. Many convinced themselves that people with these powers were just faking, so people with these powers were widely referred to as tricksters. But now, 15 years after people started getting these powers, the world was being rewritten. Things had reached a point where these powers just had to be accepted as reality. But by that point, the term trick and the term trickster were widely being used as scientific terms to describe these powers and the people who had them. Tricksters were somewhat cut off from the rest of the world, hated and feared, but even if they had powers, they were still human, so naturally there was a divide in opinion within tricksters on how to deal with the discrimination. Some tried to get back at humanity for treating them differently, for making them feel isolated or attacking them for powers they never asked for. They became villains. Some tried to help humanity, to show the world tricksters aren't monsters to be feared. They became heroes. All in all, the world turned into one big comic book. Apex Illusionist was just one of many supervillains, using the powers the world gave them to try take over the world or gain a boatload of money and power. But then there were superheroes like Frigid Hack, who would try to stop the villains, fight crime, and save the world. There were epic battles between good and evil, heroes and villains fought every day. But sadly, that meant for anyone who didn't have a trick, the world had become a dangerous place. Law enforcement was all over the place due to vigilante justice messing up the system. And the villains' plans normally led to hostages, bombs, and quite a lot of collateral damage. All it took was to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. No, past me in the info dumps right at the start. Drada Tarth was 20, with no trick to speak of, and so sick of the world's shit, she turned off the TV and went to make some tea. My biggest mood sentence in the world. Someone would deal with Apex, as they always did, with every villain. She gave a glance to a figure of a hero in grey robe she had on her bookshelf, hoping that her favourite, Miss Paragon, would deal with him, so she could see her on TV. But, turning away, she knew Apex Illusionist was the arch-enemy of Frigid Hack, so it wasn't likely. Even if it was Hack, or her favourite, more people would die as a result of the conflict, and the world would continue spiralling down into the strange, dark place where anything could happen. Except for her one hero, Drada did her best to turn a blind eye to the world of tricksters and live her own life. She'd worked hard the past few months to track down a job. She wasn't, well, she had no qualifications to her name, so she had been finding it near impossible to even pin down an interview. But she had a stroke of luck. A large office firm agreed to meet with her for an interview. They said her lack of qualifications wouldn't be a problem, as they were willing to train her up. She was meeting them tomorrow. She was nervous as hell, though, as it was going to be her first job interview. She clamped her hands around the hot cup of tea and blew out her breath, trying to picture blowing out her anxiety instead of air. In her head, she went through all the advice the job centre had given her 1,000 times before going to bed that night. Although, all it took to get mixed up in the mess of heroes and villains was to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Or at least in Drada's case, hand her CV to the wrong person. The next day, Drada found herself sighing again, wondering if she hadn't turned off her TV last night, would she have been able to figure out that her job interview was just a trap to lure hostages for Apex's plan? She arrived, a red-haired bundle of nerves, buttoned into smart black trousers and a shirt, only to find the familiar face of Apex sitting on the other side of the desk. He flashed her his infamous, insane grin and gleefully told her, "You're hired." Just as the room started to fill with gas, Drada darted to the door to get out, but it was locked, and before she could knock it down, her world turned black. When she next woke up, she was seemingly on the moon. Her body stiffened, frozen as her mind tried to process the utterly bizarre situation. There was white rock beneath her, and it made her hands dusty with a chalky substance from touching it. There was a black abyss above her with only small pinpricks of light scattered throughout. When she looked to her right, she saw, well, the earth. A ball of misty white with bits of blue peeking through the smoke screen. What else could it be? She thought to herself, tilting her head as she took a few deep breaths to calm herself. Illusionist, she reminded herself. At least she couldn't complain about his idea of holding hostages. Out of curiosity, she tried jumping, but it seemed Apex's illusions couldn't affect gravity or temperature. She didn't go flying and landed back on the ground like she normally would. That would be pretty overpowered, she mused, looking around, wondering if she was alone in her moon adventure. She wasn't. Other hostages were here too, but some were sitting on seats that weren't in her vision. Others were leaning on invisible walls. It was like watching a mime convention. "So where do you think you are?" she asked the person closest, assuming everyone had a different illusion. The geeky guy jumped out of his skin, whizzing round to face her. He fumbled with his glasses that nearly fell off, and pushed a few dark blonde bangs out of his face. "I think I'm in a database, just living in a database. What? Oh, anyway." He eventually responded, after looking around a bit. "You seem really... What does a database look like?" Drada tried to picture being in a 2D screen. Zeros and ones. Right, so it's the Matrix for you. Huh, he laughed, "I suppose." Oh, I don't like reading this bit. I'll admit now, this whole first chapter kind of came together from something called playlist writing, where you take a catalogue of music and press shuffle, and then you have to keep changing and adding things as you came along. So as I sung Database there, the main reason he ended up in a database was because that song came on. Literally, Drada ended up on the moon because a Sailor Moon opening came on, and this particular bit was because Promiscuous came on by Nelly. So that's why this is in here, just for the record. I'm not embarrassed about it. Don't know what you're talking about. Ah, the other hostage screamed. What are you doing? Don't touch me there. Matrix and Drada watched the man fall back, his face completely red, panicky, but not afraid of touches from thin air. Is he? Drada found herself blushing a bit as she thought about what his little illusionary prison was. I hope not. Matrix turned away, and Drada followed suit. Tried to ignore the loud man stuck in a hentai game. "So," Matrix tried to start a conversation, "where are you?" "The moon, apparently. It's quiet. The view's pretty nice, so I can't complain." "That says a lot about you." The voice came out of nowhere. and all the hostages fell silent as I took a drink. Bah! Tasty, refreshing water. Apex gradually came into view, like he'd used a video Why is that V small? I hope that's not in all of the EPUBs. Oh, that's very strange. Oh well. Apex gradually came into view, like he had used a video transition to bring himself into existence. Drader wondered how long he'd been there without her being able to see him, or whether he just walked in a door that she couldn't see. Are you all having fun? He looked around. Observing his hostages gave him a few different answers. Hentai's boner said yes. One woman's teary face said no. Drader's plain expression said bored, and Matrix's now icy expression said okay, but now you're here. Why would you show us such horrible things? The crying woman barked between sobs as she clutched herself. Horrible things? Trader tilted her head. Oh, I'm not making you see anything. You yourselves are shaping the illusions. I'm just giving them power. If you're seeing horrible things, that just means you're a horrible person. Apex gave a smoky grin as those words sunk in. One hostage, a well-built man, was red with rage. His fists were shaking, clenching so tightly, Drader thought he might end up breaking the skin on his palm with his nails. What do you want with us? The man gave a shout that made many in the room flinch. As I said to the world last night, I have a show to put on. A show to dazzle and probably make a lot of people puke. And you, my friends, are the stars of that show. Apex told them in a proud and animated fashion. The show will be called Apex Job Hunt, and in which I will pick 2 of you each week to battle it out for the chance at the Apex prize. Freedom and life. Only one of you will have the privilege of coming out of this alive. The atmosphere in the room turned cold. Hostages flinched, the emotions changing their illusions. The teary woman screamed and clasped her hands to her head as she fell to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. But Drader's outward appearance seemed calm, if only a little tense. Her world did change, though. The earth in the sky moved on a path to block out the light. The sun was consumed by the misty planet until it was completely taken over by the black abyss. The bright white rocks were left in shadow, but it was nothing compared to the darkness that lay behind Drader's eyes. Why? She asked, her voice flat. Why? Apex turned to her, his insane grin, thinking nothing of the look of death he was receiving. And honestly, that pissed her off more. Must I answer that? Why do I do anything to show the world? Make everyone see? What is it? The way you do, Matrix hissed. His almost too bright blue eyes sharp, surprisingly sharp compared to the jumpy geek that was there before. Exactly, Apex pointed to him, to see the monsters that lie in everyone, even the most normal and nicest of people. You're the monster! The teary woman screamed as she burst into a fit of sobs. You can't keep us here! You can't make us fight each other! You're a psycho! The hostages burst into a chorus of abuse and protests, and Apex did nothing but smile back at them. His smile grew and grew until it split his face in two, as he threw open his jaws, and all sound was consumed by laughing madness. Anger gave way to fear as the laughs chilled the hostages to the bone. The small group looked between each other, Hentai backing away from the laughing man, and the teary-eyed woman getting up and scrambling as far away as she thought she could get. Apex's laughter died down, and the man wiped his eyes of tears. With a smug look of victory, he turned to leave through whatever door he entered, but he hadn't noticed the person who had moved in front of him. He stumbled a bit to avoid bumping straight into her, and quickly pushed away his expression of momentary surprise to plaster his face with a smile again. "Are you angry? Well..." He couldn't even finish his sentence. It took the entire room a few moments to take in the series of fast practiced movements that led to the scene before them. Apex, a few seconds more than everyone else to process his view of the floor that he had from his knees. His smile was gone as he blinked at the ground, until he registered there was a hard boot on his back pushing him forward, and a searing pain from the muscles in his arms that were held back in positions they were not supposed to go. I really wish I had a face, like a really blank expression for this. I don't have anything that does justice to what kind of expression Druida has on her face right now. You'll just have to imagine it. You can't see a monster when it's standing right in front of you. Druida calmly put more weight on his back. I won't let you do this to these people. Apex gritted his teeth in pain, trying to hold back a cry. The cold blue of his eyes turned icy as he hissed, "What are you? Some kind of hero?" Would a hero really be doing this? She put on more pressure, and Apex screamed out as one of his arms gave a sickening click. "Pathetic," Druida commented. "There are better ways to handle this, Moon Girl," Matrix yelled, slowly approaching the scene like Druida was some kind of animal that would react to a sudden movement. "You want me to let him carry on with this?" She turned her head to him, everything about her calm. A sickening crack echoed through the room again, and the woman crying on the floor yelped. The rest of the hostages stood stunned. Even the man whose skin had been red with anger was now pale as a ghost. "Yeah, I mean..." Matrix struggled to think of what to say. "What if I said I can get us all out of here unharmed? And all you have to do is knock him out. Apex will be taken to prison, and no one will get hurt." Druida took a few moments to consider it, the sea blue of her eyes meeting the icy blue of Matrix's. She didn't see why he would lie at a time like this. But at the same time, she struggled to think of how she could get them out if she just got Apex out of the way. Surely he had henchmen. And how could Matrix contact anyone when their phones were taken away? Not to mention Druida had her own trust issues, and was reluctant to put her faith in his word. She looked back to Apex, unable to find a reason not to break his spine right now. For the sake of one less death. Matrix prayed his words got through to her, and they did. The words resounded with Druida, and she stopped pushing her captors back. But he wanted to kill all of us, came the whimpering words of the teary woman through the stunned silence. Why shouldn't he die? The posed question seemed to snap the other hostages out of their shock. and the well-built man, who had been angry until a few moments ago, chimed in. She's got a point. That monster doesn't deserve to live. And now you're proving his point. Matrix turned to them in fury. You're all as much of a monster as him if you decide to kill so quickly. We're not the ones who wanted everyone to kill each other, one hostage told him. And he's hurt and killed loads of people. We've seen the news, said another. Matrix seethed, fists clenched and teeth grinding. He barked arguments back at the other hostages, but seemed unable to make them take the high road. Though they all seemed to forget. It was Drada, in the end, that held Apex's life in her hands. Quite literally. You've been quiet, she spoke to Apex, wondering on why he had nothing to say to defend himself. I know when I'm beaten. He strained to look around. So you're giving up when there's an argument on whether you live or die going on? She tilted to see if she could get a look at his expression. Sorry. In the end, this is what I wanted. For people to become the monsters they are. He chuckled at his victory. Anyway, their opinion doesn't matter. You're the one who would do the deed if asked, am I correct? So, really, it is your choice what you do with me. I did have all intentions of killing you. I'm already a monster. It would make no difference to me. Those people aren't yet, though. Well, for the sake of one last death, you're actually going to survive this, she sighed. Not sure if she'd made the right decision. I'm gonna break your arms, though, she added. Well, thanks for the warning, at least, he braced himself. With that, the argument was stopped as a second sickening crack echoed through the room, followed by a scream. Drada then let go of Apex and kicked him in the head as he fell, successfully knocking him out. Like when she first... One second. Words. You know there. Like when she first grabbed Apex, there was a frozen silence. None of them really saw what happened, so for all they knew, that crack could have been his neck. He's alive. Just both his arms broken. She kindly filled them in. I said, just knock him out, Matrix glared. You never said just. Drada shrugged. I'm sorry I made that. I messed that up because this is one of my favourite exchanges in all of Moon Girl. 100%. Never said just. Love it. At least you didn't kill him. He sighed, hands landing on his hips as he shook his head. The rest of the hostages seemed to abandon the argument to kill him now he was taken care of. A sense of relief washing that darkness away. So, can we leave? One of the hostages asked Matrix. Yeah, I just need to make a call, he answered, pulling a device from under his collar and using it like a phone. While this happened, Drada walked away from Apex before getting tempted to hurt him more, and was stopped by a "Thank you." She paused and looked around to where it came from, her eyes eventually resting on the teary woman who had gotten up from the floor. What you did was scary, but you saved us. The woman smiled at her. Don't thank me, Drada said simply. Why? The angry man, who was no longer angry, came in. It's like she said, you saved us. Thank you. Drada's eyes just went dull as she looked away, not really sure how to react to their gratitude. All right, we'll be picked up soon, said Matrix after finishing his call. And that is the end of Chapter 1. I hope you enjoyed Chapter 1. So no one had to give me an opinion. So I suppose I'll just carry on in a bit, but I'm gonna take a small break. I'm gonna change the currently reading to chapter 2. And then I'm gonna go hydrate. All that good stuff. BRB. Boop boop. Me. I totally knew I was muted. At least I realized before I actually got started reading. I was just talking about the chapter, so I'll just repeat what I said. That you may have already noticed that I have already read chapter 1 of Moon Girl on this channel. I did it as more of a recorded thing, so it didn't have any of that commentary that I just put in. So that was a more fun version, I guess. I also have never got this far. I haven't read out chapter 2. So, are you ready? Are you ready for Dark Tornado and all her wonderfulness? You're not, but we're gonna do it anyway. Let's go! They didn't have to wait too long. 15 minutes of paranoia that some henchmen were going to turn up wasn't exactly fun, but the time eventually passed. The steel door was kicked open with a loud bang, exploding away the silence and scaring the hostages half to death. Drader was ready for a fight, but the person who stepped through was not an enemy. Dun 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 dun! The girl sang as she raised her hands above her head and struck a heroic pose. She clearly was not one of Apex's, and Drader relaxed. Adorned in the colours of red and green, her long coat held her symbol. A red circle in a green circle, a bullseye. Her ankle boots left bare leg to the small red hop pants. Well, except for the parts that were covered in darts strapped around her thighs. The mask on the dark-haired girl's face was reminiscent of a masquerade ball, though it didn't hide her onyx eyes and proud grin. Dart Tornado to the rescue! Now if you would come right this way, I will get you to safety! Watching Dart dance out her announcement, Droida frowned, deeply confused. She stood still, letting the other hostages go first. She had expected Frigid Hack, but then she glanced at Matrix. Maybe he was busy. Hey Moon! His eye. He met her eyes and walked to her. My name's not Moon, it's Stop. He wagged a pale finger and Droida glared, insulted. Don't tell me your name yet, okay? It's important. Alright. Droida gave a confused frown. And I need you to stick with me for a bit, okay? The others will be dropped off at the police station to take statements and stuff. Don't get off with them. Okay. Droida agreed, still very confused. She was very uncomfortable with the idea of being kept separate. She couldn't help but question if she was in trouble. But then she reasoned if she was in trouble, then they would leave her with the police. She gritted her teeth in annoyed confusion as she left with Matrix, and they separated out into two vans. Her, Dart, and Matrix in one, and the rest in the other. Anxiety and anger bubbled up inside her. So this is them? Dart looked Droida over when the doors of their van closed. I thought it'd be the scary guy, she added with a disappointed pout. So many lies from you, Dart, so many. What are you talking about? Why do you have me separate? Do you really need to ask after what you pulled in there? Matrix raised an eyebrow. Droida tensed. Yeah, okay, she broke Apex's arms, but he was a bad guy, right? Did it really matter? And she didn't kill him. She tried not to show how worried she was, but she couldn't figure out what they were thinking. Was she in trouble or not? Were they taking her straight to prison instead of taking her to the police or something? Well, Geek Boy here told us about your stunt, so we need to ask you a question, Dart explained, leaning forward as the van started to move. Droida glared, anger covering confusion. What? Why did you hurt Apex? Matrix asked the question. Droida stared back at Matrix for a moment. Why? She wondered. Oh, hello! Welcome! We're into chapter 2, so do you want me to give you a quick summary of chapter 1? Okay, so chapter 1's kind of what I told you in the last stream, where Droida has gone for a new job, only to find that that job was the job application was a whole trick to lure hostages. But she beat up the guy who was holding them hostage, and one of them may or may not have been an undercover hero who has called another hero in to get them out. So now she's been separated from the others after breaking the villain's arms. And now they're in a van heading away from the scene. That is a bad summary, but that's what you get. That's what you get for being late. Droida just stared back at Matrix for a moment. Why? She wondered what they wanted to hear. Why did it even matter? She looked at her lap and resigned herself. She'd never know unless she gave an answer. So she gave them the truth. Because I had to stop him. Because I had to stop him from putting those people through something horrible. Why else? Dart and Matrix exchanged a small smile. So the guy's called Matrix because they were kept in illusionary prisons based off themselves. So Drada was kept on the moon, and this guy called Matrix was kept in a database which apparently looked like ones and zeros to him. So she started calling him Matrix. We don't know his real name. And Dart Tornado is the superhero that came to get them. Just quick summary of who the characters are in this scene. Dart and Matrix exchanged a small smile. That made Drada angry again, seeing them understand everything and leaving her bumbling in the dark. It's like parents laughing at a sex joke their child had no idea they just made. So, to put it simply, you did it to save others, Matrix confirmed. Yeah. Drada glared, literally not able to think of any other reason you would do what she did. You pass! Dart clapped. Pass what? Drada barked at the girl, but Dart didn't seem fazed by the deadly glare she was receiving. One more odd question, and Drada was about to rip Dart's head off. Luckily for Dart, the smoke was cleared with the hero's next question. Do you want to be a hero? A moment of silence took over the van. Drada looked at Dart dumbfounded. She even leaned away from her and straightened her back, looking like a scared meerkat. All anger had faded. Just words leaving her with only one word in mind. What? Do you want to be a hero? Matrix repeated slowly and clearly, like he was talking to a child. Drada was far too confused to be insulted. What? Why? What the hell? What about what I did said hero to you? I got pissed off and broke a man's arms, she exclaimed, wondering what planet these two were from. High combat skill, reckless action to protect others, ability to stay calm and think clearly in bad situations, and lack of fear, Matrix listed. And that's what makes a hero? Drada asked, still not able to believe what she'd just been asked. For the insane situations we end up in, yeah! Badoo's, yeah, live audiobook time. You realize I had all intentions of killing him, she pointed out. Then why didn't you? Dart tilted her head, the single-side ponytail flopping in her vision, so she was forced to untilt her head and chase the offending hair away. One less death, she answered, looking away from Matrix, who, she expected, was going to sit there smug about it. You weren't going to kill him for revenge or for fun. You said yourself you were going to do it for the others. So at least you were going to kill him for good reason. And it didn't take much to change your mind, Matrix explained logically. Drada took a deep breath and started to consider it all. Apparently, insane was hero material, which, when you thought about it a little bit, made sense. The things the heroes did for the sake of others. When she thought about the news and the articles, there was no way you could do what they did and still call yourself sane. But Drada had done all she could until now to stay away from the trickster game. Oh, people with powers are called tricksters. The powers are called tricks. Just filling in what's already been put in. All she wanted to do was live her life, but it was so easy to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. It was so easy to hand her CV to the wrong person. Maybe turning a blind eye wasn't going to be good enough. She could help against that. There'll be some tests before you can... There'll be some tests we can give you. Come on, me. There will be some tests before we can give you an okay on it. But you're looking for a job, right? Matrix cut into her thoughtful silence. Hero wasn't exactly what I had in mind, she admitted. She just wanted a nice little office job. Heck, she would have been happy being T-girl for the rest of her life. But it seemed the world had other plans. Plans that she was starting to think weren't a bad idea. Dreda wasn't too good at English or maths, nor did she have a single qualification to her name. Maybe this was the best way for her, because if she knew there was something she could do, it was beat people up. If she could do that to help people, who was she to argue? I'll do my best and give it a try. Welcome aboard, Mungal! Dart clapped. Dreda gave a nod, honestly not sure how to deal with someone as hyper as Dart, and looked to Matrix, deciding to test something. Nothing to add, Frigid Hack? Dreda had to admit it was slightly. Dreda had to admit she was slightly disappointed when she didn't see the same jumpy reaction she had when she first spoke to him. Though she didn't mind the slightly impressed look he gave. When did you figure that out? He asked curiously. When Dart turned up instead of you. But the fact you were in an illusionary database helped. Where else would you be if you were gathering information? She explained. Not bad detective skills then. Not bad detective skills as well then. Hack added to the mental list of things that could make Dreda a hero. It was a quiet journey to wherever they were going. Dreda had plenty of time to go over it all in her head. She'll need a costume, stage name, she'd actually go out and she'd actually have to talk to people. Her stomach turned again as nervousness set in, but then left again in an instant as she remembered something that might be a problem. I don't have a trick, you know. All heroes have that, she declared. I think you do have one. Hack looked over her. It's just not as obvious as throwing fire. You mean like strength, speed, or reflex boosts? Stark chimed in. Exactly. On the tests we do will pick those up. Hack said simply, and went to get back to his daydreaming out the window, but Dreda spoke again. You're talking about trick and combat skill tests, aren't you? Ones that give you trick and combat, a number out of 0 and 100. If so, then I've done them before. My trick level is 0. Nino, Nino, Nino. Dart's eyes sprung to Dreda and she imitated a fire engine siren. Dreda shifted in her seat, trying to get as far away as she could, trying to get as far away from the human alarm system as she could. How do you know about those? Hack asked. His eyes narrowed, a serious look on his face, like there wasn't a young girl bouncing up and down in her seat saying Nino. Dreda could only be amazed at his ignoring skill. Is it not common knowledge? Dreda looked at him nervously, trying her best to ignore Dart as well. No, it's not. The tests are kept secret and only allowed to be used by us and some scientists who want to research where tricks came from and what influences them. There's a fear that a level system on powers would have a harsh effect on society, he lectured. Like all the low levels being pissed off they're not high levels and ganging up and wars and stuff, Dart simplified, ceasing her bouncing and yelling. So where did you take your tests? Hack ordered the answers from her. He dreaded what Dreda could answer. It was sensitive, very secret, and he was terrified at the idea that if Dreda had taken it, a random person he'd never met, then it was more widespread than any of them had thought. None of your business, Dreda answered, and Hack's eyes narrowed, gritting his teeth. He was about to tell her just how much this could affect the world when she added, I won't tell anyone about them, but I won't tell you how I know about them. I will say, at least, I don't know anyone who knows about them, nor have I told anyone. Hack sighed. It would take an idiot not to hear the finality of that statement. It frustrated him, but he wasn't getting any more information, so he let her. He wasn't getting any more information out of her, so he dropped it. At least she said she wouldn't tell anyone. So, Dark cut in, her eyes curious. If your trick level was 0, what was your combat level? 85. The reactions were very different. Awesome! Dart's eyes lit up. Hack took a few moments. He stared at Dreda, looked her up and down, and finally spoke. 85. Did I hear that right? Yeah, 85. Dreda repeated. Bullshit, he snapped. There's no way someone without a trick could get that high. Even then, the highest recorded combat level is 73. And evidently, you have every recorded test of combat level, Dreda said dryly, and Hack's eyes narrowed. Oh, bird! Dart giggled. Hack sat in his chair, moving his eyes away to the window and crossing his arms. We'll find out when you take the test, he grumbled, and refusing to admit defeat. Dreda smirked, finally relaxing a bit. And I took a drink. Yeah. And I shuffled the seat. And we carried on. Relaxation was short-lived, as about 5 minutes later the van came to a halt. Dart jumped from her seat as soon as her seatbelt was off, sliding open the side door with a yell of, "We're here!" Where? Dreda dreaded to ask what kind of weird base of operations she might have been taken to. Her mind went to the movies, where the hero base is behind waterfalls and in caves. HQ. We'll tell you the exact location when we know you're definitely becoming a hero, Hack informed her. Dreda nodded in understanding. It made sense to keep the location secret with so many enemies. She admitted she was a little disappointed not to hear any kind of waterworks, but she did hear an echo as Dart's feet landed on the concrete outside. "Come on, newbie girl!" Dart yelled as Hack and Dreda exited the sliding door of the van like normal people. Unlike Dart, who had literally flown out. "I'm not a newbie yet," Dreda pointed out. "Yeah, you'll ace the tests and stuff and be a hero in no time." Dart seemed to have perfect faith in her, and Dreda wished she could share the optimism. She was starting to feel nervous. Now that the opportunity had been put in front of her, she wanted it. Being a hero didn't sound too bad. If she had the skills and could put them to good use, it would be great. What more could she want? She was scared, though. Scared her lack of trick was going to make them turn her away. Scared that somehow she was going to mess this all up. She didn't show this, though. On the outside, she was calm as when she broke both of Apex's arms. Distracting herself, she looked around only to find disappointment. Even though they were underground, they were clearly not in any sort of cool hideout from the movies. They were in a car park. Not far from the entrance, if the slight breeze Dreda felt was anything to go by. Her eyes scanned over the expensive-looking cars. A shot in the dark guess told Dreda they were probably in the city centre, underneath one of the skyscrapers. Only the private car park of one of those would have this many expensive cars parked up together like a joyrider's wet dream. "You must be Moon Girl." Dreda pulled her eyes away to a woman who had been waiting for them. Her eyes were as dark as her wavy brown hair, her skin a beautiful, naturally tanned colour. She stood in a tight grey business suit, the smile on her thick lips taking the edge off her sharp appearance. Am I ever gonna get to use my name here? She glanced back, covering anxiety with annoyance, missing the woman's face soften as she saw straight through her. I'm sorry, but your identity is too valuable to be given out if you're going to become a hero. We can call you something else for now if you prefer, the woman offered. It'll do for now, I guess. Drada resigned herself to it. Does that mean I don't get to know anyone else's names? She glanced between Dart and Hack. We have fake names we use with each other, and when we're undercover, it means if any of us turn traitor, or if we come across anyone with a trick that can look into people's minds, our identities will still be safe, Hack explained. Drada nodded. It was smart, if a little paranoid. So I'm Tim, he introduced. Lenny! Dart put her hand up. And I'm Claire, said the businesswoman. Drada just gave a nod, hoping that by the end of this she can give a name to them in return. This way, Moon. Claire turned on her impressive heels and led them out of the underground car park. It was awkwardly silent between the four, well, except for Lanny, humming some tune, eventually matching the tune of the music in the elevator when they entered. The fact that the elevators had music just showed how high class this building must be. The elevator itself showed that too. No graffiti, no chewing gum, just a nice golden bar lying in the middle of walls and spotless mirrors for wallpaper to make it feel less like a claustrophobic metal box on string. It was making Drada's stomach turn even more. She wasn't sure how to act somewhere like this. She felt like an alien, like she'd stumbled into a foreign country with all its own customs, and she had no idea how to not insult everyone. Have Tim and Lanny explained the test we need to run? Claire looked back, having realised she hadn't explained yet. Trick and combat tests, right? Drada said, the little information she knew. She already knew about them. Tim did. Claire looked back shocked, but quickly recovered herself. Oh, well, you'll have to fill me in later, Tim. Tim gave a nod, and Claire shifted her gaze to Dart. Lanny, you don't have to stay with us. Nah, I'm staying. I want to see this, the girl replied, rolling on and off her toes. Claire gave her a confused look. Okay. Drada glanced between Tim and Lanny. Neither of them told Claire about her combat and trick level. Not that she was complaining. Drada was odd, she knew that. She was an outlier in the data, she knew that. But Claire was clearly the commanding officer? Drada tilted her head as she thought about it. Did heroes have ranks, or was Claire more senior because of her age? As much as she didn't look too old, she was clearly older than Tim and Lanny. Or was it because she was stronger than them? May even the case of those with high trick level command more respect. If it was that, she would be screwed. Drada's mind ran away as she found more and more ways to worry herself when the elevator finally dinged. Ding! Dart predictably echoed, bouncing as the door opened. Brace yourself, Tim muttered to Drada, who nodded confused. Now, Lanny! Claire, with a stern face, took a breath, but her voice was blown away. A gust of wind shot Lanny down the corridor, blowing up paper skirts and the odd unprepared person. Drada had to admit, if it wasn't for Tim's warning, she might have been off her feet too. Lanny, no flying in the office! Claire barked. Lanny turned in the air, hovering in the windy air, and giggling. Come on, slowpokes! She does this when she's excited. Tim sighed, regaining his balance as Claire stepped out, one hand on her hips and the other hand with extended finger waved at Lanny with each word. She said, We are not going anywhere until both of your feet are placed firmly on the ground, young lady. Hard eyes of stone glared at the 3-year-old in a teenage body, and eventually the hyper-dark-skinned girl gave a sigh. Fine, she grumbled, and the unnatural indoor winds disappeared as her small red boots tapped on the ground. What's got her so worked up? Claire gave a sigh, looking to Tim. We'll find out. Tim gave Drader a glance before moving into the hall and helping people with some of the papers they dropped. Lanny frowned deeply at him and heaved another dramatic sigh. After helping clear up Lanny's mess, they moved through a corridor and some open offices. A few people came up asking how the heroes were and who Drader was, but introductions were stopped short before names could be mentioned. They eventually came to a large empty room where there was nothing but white, the door in, and a small double metallic door on the other end of the room. Now, Claire turned to face her. I'm sorry to push you right into it, but we can't really explain anything, nor do we want any more details about you until we have done the test. This is for your safety and ours. So that's why you brought me here rather than let me go home. You didn't want any contact information to get me later. Drader nodded, guessing the reason they didn't want any more information was the same reason they didn't use their real names with each other. She never imagined heroes to be so paranoid. Exactly, Claire nodded, happy she understood. Now I know Tim said you knew about the tests, but what exactly, so I know what to explain. Drader hesitated as her stomach did somersaults. She was scared of telling them what she knew after Tim's reaction. She was so very scared that her knowledge was so wrong, that they wouldn't want her anymore, that somehow it wouldn't be legal, even imagining herself sitting next to Apex in prison. No one should know, right? You took them before, right? She looked up. Oh, that's Tim. You took them before, right? She looked up to the male voice and her eyes landed on Tim. Wait, looked up? She hadn't realised she was looking down. Glancing between the other two, Claire looked a bit concerned, and Lanny was blinking her onyx eyes expectantly. Maybe she did a bit more than hesitate. She took a deep breath to calm herself and spoke. Yeah, it's a combat simulation, at least to begin with. Yes, Claire smiled. A combat simulation invented by a trickster who could manipulate computers. Drader already knew that. We worked together with a science team to invent our very first holographic room simulations 10 years ago, though the systems aren't available to the public, or even some governments to use. They'd already knew that. The actual test, as you say, is a combat simulation that tailors itself as it learns more about the person's reactions. For example, if it detects a trick, but detects the trick isn't good in combat, it tailors for an environment where the trick could be used to its fullest. This allows for low combat scores and high trick scores. Again, Drader knew that. Basically, it pushes you to your limits and ranks you on it. Drader simplified. Yes. Claire seemed a bit disappointed that Drader obviously wasn't interested in hearing more about it. Do you feel ready now, or do you want a drink and a rest? I'll get it over and done with now. Are you sure? Claire questioned and Drader nodded. All right then. Drader imagined to them it sounded tough that she didn't want to rest after her hostage situation, but it was by no means her being tough. She couldn't sit there and wait for this at the moment. Her mind was racing with how many things could go wrong, and how many ways this day could end terribly. She'd even thought of a few ways she could end up dying. She took a breath as Claire, Tim and Lanny left the room to get what she needed. She had to get this over sooner rather than later. The sooner she knew her future lay here, the sooner she could calm down. Claire came back with some black pads. Drader had a strap over her arms, legs, and a vest like one over her body. Claire went to explain, but Drader knew. They were sensors so that the computer can know what you're doing. They're also for the projections to affect you. It wouldn't simulate pain, but if an attack was supposed to blast you back, if an attack would be hard enough to move you, then the pads would try to simulate that pushing for the right reaction. Me, Lanny and Tim will be watching with a few others. If the simulation gets too much, you can... Others? Drada asked curiously. People who will support you when you become a hero. If you become a hero. It's good for them to see what you can do now, rather than having to show them later. And as I was about to say, if the simulation gets too much, just ask for us to stop and we will. Drada nodded. She guessed that maybe a few who had taken this test must have found it a shock and gotten scared. For her to say that. Good luck. Claire gave her a smile before leaving the white room. Drada found her nerves fading when she heard the machines boot up. She flexed her arms a bit and rolled her neck. It had been a while since she could go all out, and honestly, she was getting pretty excited. A black figure appeared in front of her, and Drada pulled her fists up ready. This is... Claire was about to explain, but Drada cut her off. I don't mean to be rude, but I know. You can skip the intro. Alright, the simulation will start in 3, 2, 1. Chapter 3. Da da da. I'll take a small drink, and I think we should be able to get through chapter 3, and then I will probably finish there. Let me change my little label for when people come in. I need to know where I'm up to. 3. Does that not work? Oh, I need to do the thing. Yeah, there we go. Boom. Righto, chapter 3. It's time for some combat. Hello, you're just in time for big fight scene. Big computer fight scene, chapter 3. Trick level 0. The shadow made a move on Drada, charging for her, and it was at that moment her mind melted away. There was nothing. No nerves, no ifs, no buts, no possibilities of death or imprisonment. It all faded away. Her mind focused on one thing. Her mind focused on the one thing Drada understood more than anything else. Combat. She sidestepped the shadow's attempt to attack. Oh, okay, fair enough. Good. I knew that, shush. She sidestepped the shadow's attempt to attack, took out its feet, caught its head, and snapped it. One fast, fluid movement that would end a person's life in the blink of an eye. No trick, just clean, simple murder. The shadow disappeared, with enough damage done to kill it. 30. The combat level she showed was 30. 30-40 were people who were skilled in combat, not fully trained, but showed skill. Purple belt in karate. The program now adjusted to the ease in which Drada dispatched her first enemy. 2 shadows appeared, one in front and one behind. She ducked under an attack from the one behind, grabbed the arm that was now above her head, and flipped the shadow into the one in the front. The shadows whose head was closest had a foot crush its ghostly skull before it could even hit the ground properly. Curb stomped the force to kill and it disappeared. The other shadow sat up, hurrying to get to its feet, but a roundhouse kick to its head caused enough damage to kill it, and it disappeared. Drada gave a frustrated sigh. It always starts too slow. Meanwhile, there were smiles watching. I see why you brought her in. Tim ignored them as he stared at the numbers on the screen with a deep frown. 2 down, 3 appeared. 3 down, 4 appeared. 5, 7, 8, 9, 10. Drada was a machine, taking down each and every one without a weapon, without a trick, and without, so far, taking a single hit. It was like some action scene from a movie, but more chaotic. In movies, enemies came at the heroes one by one. In this, shadows punched and kicked from multiple directions at once, and as if she had eyes all over her skin, like somehow she knew the future, she flawlessly dived out of the way and countered. At about 15 enemies, the room started to shift. As soon as Dreda noticed it happen, she jumped at a shadow onto its shoulder and over the main horde. The hologram shifted while she was in the air so she could see the area better and land just fine. She knew what it would shift to anyway. She'd done this enough times to know what it did to push her to her limit and see how dangerous she could be. A junkyard. Completely uneven ground, scattered pieces of metal of all shapes. Plenty of improvised weaponry. Dreda took immediate advantage. A good enough distance away from her enemies, she had time to grab some smaller, sharp pieces beneath her and throw them, taking out one or two. She then grabbed a long pole and darted forward, closing the distance. And I took a small drink. One sweep took 5 off their feet, one unlucky enough to fall on the many sharp objects that made their battleground. The others stepped over as the imperfect AI mindlessly went after their target. Dreda stopped with the lethal shots for a while, using the pole to keep the shadows at bay until she had taken in her surroundings, which to her took a while. To anyone watching, took a few seconds. When she had a better idea of what was around, she did a sweep again, taking out enough feet to make a path out of the horde of shadows. She darted through her opening, hopping around the sharp pieces of metal and up a particular mound she spotted. As she knew they would, the shadows mindlessly followed. So she shoved her pole down into an opening and used its leverage to rain down an avalanche of sharp metal onto them. In one move, her enemy count went from 13 to 0. How many is she taking out now? Claire watched in a way. 106. Tim answered, simply ignoring Lanny, who was literally jumping up and down, clapping. And are those numbers right? Another woman in the room asked. System seems to be working fine, Tim said, his frown only getting deeper. Dreda had done this enough to know what happened next. There was a momentary break as the system figured out what she already knew. Her eyes darted round for something she was going to need. Her eyes eventually fixed on it, and she skidded down the now smaller mountain of scrap she was on, bouncing over the pile that had been the horde not too long ago, and landed just in time for a jet of fire to hit her. Luckily, she was at what she needed. The long pole she had before was abandoned in favour of a large sheet of metal, the edges slightly bent so she had some way to hold it up. She stomped on the end and sent it between her and the jet of fire and held it up as she looked around for more. Some of the people in the room jumped from their seats, and even Tim sat up in shock. It's sending tricksters after her! We should stop this. Dreda stood up and went to the keyboard, but Lanny grabbed her wrists. Lanny, she should get hurt. This isn't time to... But look. Lanny nodded to the monitor. She's doing fine. Tim sat back and the others turned to the screen. Lanny was right. Dreda was doing fine. She'd taken the shield and ran forward with it, jumped over it, and kicked the fire trickster shadow in the head. She moved out of the way of her falling shield and danced around it, grabbing the cooler side, ready to block an attack from a water trickster this time. It's like she was born to fight, isn't she? Lanny smiled. Just watching Dreda, it couldn't have been put better. It wasn't like watching someone normal fight. Someone normal would show fear. There would at least be some terror that the fire would burn, that the water could drown them. Dreda held no such fear. even when the water pressure of the attack caused her shield to fly out of her grip. She was forced to run. No one could sense fear. When the water pressure was enough to start slicing the metal, there was no fear as she picked up some sharp pieces of metal as she ran and threw them the water trickster's way. Having to put their focus on the small pieces, the pieces of metal, Dreda darted forward right behind it, right behind what she had thrown. One piece of metal blocked and sent flying, then a second. Dreda jumped up as the third was, and she was finally in range. There was a moment, at least to Dreda, of time slowing. The shadowy trickster was moving to attack her next. She doubted the computer felt the excitement of this moment, the gamble of battle. Who can pull the trigger first? Can Dreda land her trick before a torrent of water drowns her? That was the question that the room of people watching were asking themselves. But Lanny and, strangely, Tim had the same thought. Is there any doubt? As the water started to appear, Dreda's foot connected before it could be used as a weapon. If the shadow had been a person, there would have been a loud crack as her foot collided with what would be its temple, causing more than enough brain damage to make the shadow disappear. Another shadow started to appear, and she watched it warily, but had a feeling she knew what was going to happen. It was normally about now. Even before she finished the thought, the room turned back to the plain white all of a sudden. Dreda stumbled as the uneven ground became even again. She took in... Need a second. I took in a few deep breaths. She took in a few deep breaths, bringing herself out of battle mode and back to reality. Sadly, that did make her notice her tired and burning muscles. I'm rusty, she noted, stretching a bit to try to wind down. You can start taking off the sensors if you want. Tim's voice came down the speakers. Claire's coming down to get you. Oh yeah, the reason she took the test in the first place. All the nerves suddenly came back and she felt like she wanted to puke. Dreda had to take another few deep breaths before she started to take off the sensors. It would be the moment of truth after this. After the redhead had pretty much taken off all the sensors, Claire came in with a bottle of water. That was amazing! You probably want this though. Thanks. Dreda happily took the bottle after throwing off the last sensor. With a flick of the wrist, the cap came off, and she downed a few gulps. Is it? No, too early. Come on. Claire began to lead out. There are some people I want you to meet. Slightly annoyed she didn't get a yes, you're a hero, or no, get the fuck out, you freak of nature, Dreda just followed quietly, still hoping to get an answer soon. They climbed some stairs, followed some corridors, and rounded 2 corners. Eventually they got to a room where she saw Lanny and Tim, as well as 2 others she didn't recognize. The room was sizable but dully lit. Wires crisscrossed the floor. It was much warmer than the corridor that led into it, likely because of the giant servers that ran the simulations. A few chairs were dotted around, but only Tim was sitting down at a keyboard looking grumpily at the monitor. He glanced at Dreda a moment, ignoring the smirking Lanny as he said, I thought you said your combat score was 85. Dreda tilted her head. Did it come out lower? I mean, I guess I could be a bit rusty. Dreda couldn't help but be genuinely concerned. She really didn't like the idea of getting weaker. But Tim, with a huff, turned the screen towards her. Trick level 0. Combat level 87. The screen read. It was probably the first time they'd seen Dreda smile. Happily. As you can see, Dreda pointed out, you can clearly handle yourself. You should be able to become a hero, but It's fine, Claire, the shorter woman in the room said, beaming. It's fine. But what? Drada snapped. I don't mean to sound discriminatory, but it's your trick level. Drada felt her heart jump off a cliff and smack right down in the pit of her stomach. Smack down into the pit of her stomach. They couldn't do this to her, right? She could do it. She could be a good hero, and she could likely kick the ass of every hero here. Just because she didn't have a trick. You see, Claire carried on as Drada tried not to show her disappointment. As you probably know, there's a lot of fear and uncertainty around tricksters. Heroes have helped with that. It gives us a way to show people that we're not just scary monsters with powers. The vision of a hero at the moment is that they can only be these people with powers, and I know that's not true. But the image is what's helping people start to accept tricksters. Claire gave an awkward sigh. What I mean to say is that if someone who is not a trickster became a hero, then it may not help tricksters standing in society at the moment. I'm sorry. Drada just nodded and looked to the floor. She could understand what they were saying. It was rough for tricksters right now. They were still very demonized by the media. No matter what heroes did, villains pulled the image of tricksters down into the darkness they sank to in their schemes. They were bullied outcasts at the moment. And Drada didn't want to make that any worse by taking away the one thing they had. At the same time, though, there was a very large part of her that just wanted to cry. She really did want to be a hero. She knew she would be good at it. She knew she could do it. But she couldn't doom people for it. Society doesn't have to know she doesn't have a trick, said the short woman, still beaming. Trish, Claire went to talk, but was interrupted. Claire, the girl clearly has what it takes, and besides, look at the poor baby. She's nearly in tears. As soon as she said that, Drada panicked a moment and tried her best to turn her face to stone again. But then Trish hopped over and gave her a hug, and that partly built stone face crumbled, turning into one of slight panic. Tim couldn't help but snigger a bit. Trish let go and got off her tippy toes, bringing her height to just under Drada's shoulders, which surprised Drada because she wasn't exactly tall either. Trish took a few steps back, so that she wasn't looking up at Drada so much, and spoke her proposal. They've been calling you Moon Girl, right? Yeah, Drada nodded. Do you like it? Is it growing on you? 'Cause I like it. Drada went to speak, but Tim realized something. This is Trish, by the way. She helps build and maintain a hero's media image. Yes, I do, and I like the whole moon theme. The woman's brain was already off, and it seemed as she struck a pose, her body leaning forward and her arms covering most of her face bar her eyes, she declared in a dramatic fashion, "The mysterious Moon Girl." Claire was suddenly smiling too. I see. So it would be part of her image that her trick is not known. Trish got out of the pose and pushed some of her sandy blonde hair out of her face. Exactly. Even if we have to reveal her trick, we can say it's heightened reflex, strength, or speed. After what we just witnessed, it's perfectly believable. In fact, if I didn't have this test to prove it, I would call you a liar if you said you didn't have a trick. So, does that mean... Drada wasn't sure. A few seconds ago, she was sure she was going home without a job. Back to square one with daily visits to the job centre. You can become a hero. Claire finally gave her the confirmation, and Drada struggled not to laugh. Not because she found it funny, but because she was so relieved. She got her answer, and it was the one she wanted. She had a job. Something to do with her life, rather than the aimless wandering to the shops, job centre and home, as she had for a long, long time. She could help people. She could make a difference now. Her life had meaning now. She wasn't going to let it, and she wasn't going to let it go for anything. Thank you. I told you. Lenny clapped as most of the room smiled warmly at the blushing and smiling Dreda. Dreda's very full day ended there, without being introduced to the tall guy who was the final and very quiet member of the room. Claire gave her a new phone for them to contact her on. Thank you. It's funny, I don't think Super Hot was out when I first wrote that, so maybe they read my book, or maybe they based it off it. Who knows? Claire gave Dreda a new phone to contact her on, and she called a taxi home. Although Dreda was raring to start, they insisted she went home and got some rest first. She'd just been in a hostage situation, then quickly in a combat training simulator, and that was not known for going easy on someone. Dreda sighed and sat back in the taxi, not even thinking about looking where they were going and where she actually had been for the past few hours. She was trying to get her mind to settle. She was going to be a hero. She couldn't help but smile when she thought of it. She felt a little buzz of excitement when she did. She couldn't wait. But at the same time, they were right. As soon as she sat back in the taxi, she realised how tired she was. She panicked a lot about her interview this morning. Panicked more about the potential of becoming a hero, then had to push herself to her limits in a training simulation. She gave a good stretch and sighed, calming her mind from her eventful day. That is the end of chapter 3. Yeah, when did Super Hot come out? I'm gonna look for that. Wikipedia, help me. 2013. Or at least it was like a mini thing in 2013, but then released properly in 2016, which was the same year Moon Girl was released. So we had the same thoughts. Super High is very cool. The knife throwing in the VR is really fun with that one. Although it's really hard to like get the technique down. I found I kept like actually letting go at the top of the arc of the throw was really hard. Yeah. But that is all I'm going to read for today. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed. As for future streams, I will stream tomorrow at 1 PM, probably some more Final Fantasy. But after that, I won't be streaming until next Sunday, due to the fact I start a new job next week, which is unfortunately a full-time 9-to-5 job. Next session of this, or next session of Final Fantasy? Yeah, well, I'll probably do gaming in the week, and then I want to do Sunday as Sunday story time, where I will read things. More books. I'll probably do more book next Sunday. I don't know if I want to read the whole of my book because, you know, I won't be able to pay for it. So, what should I go up to? I don't know. I could probably do one more session on it at least. And then I might pick a different book. But as I say, I start a new job, so after this week, where I will stream every Sunday at least, once I've settled into the job, I hope to stream a little bit more in the evening. So maybe Tuesdays and Thursdays look to be the days. After next week, I will try do Tuesday evening and Sunday evening, and then we'll just see kind of how I settle in the job and how tired I am and stuff like that, and then maybe I'll try add Thursday into the things. It will be gaming during the week and reading on Sundays. That will be my schedule. Hopefully I can stick to it. But yeah, thank you very much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed. Obviously you can grab the whole of Moon Girl on Kindle and Amazon and Playbooks and iBooks. Oh, not Playbooks actually, I don't think Playbooks has it. iBooks has it. Kobo has it. Many, most good ebook retailers and a lot of paperback retailers too. Yeah, thank you for coming. Hereupon, John, thank you for keeping me company. I will see you next time. Nope, that's the wrong screen. That's the starting screen, not the bye-bye screen. Anyway, bye-bye.